Welcome to part 5 of getting hired in SaaS sales. Today we're going to focus on that final interview stage, which is typically some kind of board or panel interview, and we'll have some kind of interactive element like a presentation or a role play. So we're going to focus on presentations and role plays, some of the do's and don'ts based on the feedback I get from hiring managers and successful and unsuccessful candidates. Before we get into that, just a real quick thing that we should all be doing before that final stage. Pick the phone up, book yourself a demo, look at the software, talk to the salespeople, qualify that it's technology that you're happy with selling, but also have a conversation at that point with the salesperson about what it's like to work there, what are the challenges that they're facing. It'll do two things. Firstly, it will qualify it for you as an opportunity that you absolutely want to follow through, but secondly, it will get you on the hiring manager's radar, because the minute he comes off or she comes off the phone, the salesperson will put their phone down, they'll go through to their boss and they'll say, hey, just had a candidate on the phone that's coming to you for final stage last week. He or she was great, really proactive, and used their initiative to obviously find out a bit more and see the technology. So if we're not doing that already, you should be. Get on the phones, be a pain in the arse, and book yourself a demo. So presentations, and these are really basic points, but people are still forgetting them and making these mistakes in very senior interviews. So first thing, before we even get onto the presentation, let's think logistics. Technology is great, but it can also let us down. So qualify in advance how you're going to be presenting it, what format do you need to bring it in. I'd always send through my presentation to the recruiter anyway, because they might have some tips and a bit of an inside guide from the hiring manager, but absolutely send your final version across. So if worst comes to the worst, quick phone call, the recruiter can have it sent across or emailed, or even email it across to the organisation in advance, back it up on other devices. Moving on from that and logistics, we'll come on to timing. Again, you will be given a time frame to work to. If it's 10 minutes, that's not an invitation to speak for 15 minutes. People, contrary to popular opinion, people don't like salespeople that talk and talk and talk and talk. They want to see that you're able to follow instruction, nail the brief, and do it in a concise time period. So let's consider that. Next thing, and it sounds a small point, but I have seen some horrific looking presentations. Even if the content and the delivery is on point, how they look can quite often create that first impression. And moreover, it says something about you, pride in your own work, and so on. What I would suggest you do, get your presentation and send it off to a graphic designer. If you don't know one, use something like Fiverr.com, where you'll find somebody that will turn your presentation into something that looks amazing. That's not so you can go in there and go, look at what I've delivered and look at what I've done. I'd actually walk in and say, look, little caveat here, I'm not capable of this. Please don't think I'm going to be able to do this if I come and work for you in terms of the aesthetics of this presentation. But what I did was I used a contact, they owed me a favour, and they create this. They're a graphic designer. That says more about you in terms of, again, being proactive, using your initiative and going one step further and caring. And it's something which people completely forget about. Moving on from that then, let's come to content. I would always say it's important that we're answering the brief and looking at what they have asked us to put in the presentation and not going too far away from that. I think within that, it's bullet points, it's a few words. Again, some of the worst presentations are ones, the content might be great, but ones where we've got blocks of text or complete sentences, and people end up just reading from the presentation. Or worse, our audience aren't listening to us, they're simply looking at a screen and reading the sentences that we've put on there. So use imagery where you can. Use a couple of phrases or a couple of word phrases rather than ongoing sentences and so on. And crucially, it will come down to the delivery, making sure you're passionate, making sure you don't speak too quickly, and making sure you tailor that to the audience. So moving on to role plays, and going to focus on a couple of points here. First is just to try and dispel a myth. And I think some candidates feel that a role play is an opportunity for you to go in and talk about their product or solution. And that's not the case. Whilst it's important you've gone away and done your research about a product and solution, the role play, that's not what they're looking for. They're looking at your sales process and crucially your ability to question. And the reason that I say this, and this goes back to when I used to go into organizations and I used to coach and train salespeople, is that oddly, the less somebody knows about a product or service that they're selling, the more they feel they need to talk about it to try and convince themselves as much as anybody that they know what they're talking about. And so if we're in a role play and we're selling something that we've never sold before because it's a new potential company for us, it's important that we don't fall into that trap. And instead, we demonstrate our questioning and our listening techniques. So asking nice open questions, and those questions, they don't have to change depending on who you're seeing. It's the same thing. It's understanding background about the business. It's understanding challenges. It's asking what impacts those challenges are having on the business, on the team, on budget, on share price, on that individual. And it's tailoring those questions to the individual that you're speaking to. And this brings me on to my next point. Quite often, you'll have two different job titles effectively within that role play. You might have a CFO and you might have a HR director, or you might have a CFO and you might have the IT director. That's not just to add realism to the role play. That's a test. That's looking at how do you as a salesperson differ your approach, and how do you tailor your approach selling into procurement or selling into finance or selling into IT. So let's make sure we recognize that and really hone in on asking questions that are going to be relevant and problem questions, and building requirements and pain for that C-suite individual rather than just a generic conversation with two people. Let's really make sure we understand, right, we've got a CFO in here. His triggers and what he or she is looking for out of this is going to be very, very different to what the HR director or what the IT director are looking to extract from this environment. Finally, and this will depend upon the context of the role play and how it's set, but there'll typically be an opportunity for you to go ahead and close. If you have to pitch, you might have to summarize and match back maybe 2 or 3 features of your product based on the requirements you've been told. But whatever the role play, typically there's an opportunity to close, so do so. They're looking for a salesperson that is going to define next steps clearly. So whatever you do, don't leave that role play without defining what those next steps are and handling any objections that come up off the back of a close that you might use. So there you have it. That's our guide to how we'd approach that final interview stage. If there's anything within these videos that you'd like to find out more about, please feel free to get in touch. Any candidate that we work with through the hiring process will be holding your hand through absolutely every stage and giving you the best possible advice and information to give you the best chance of getting that role. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, please get in touch now. Thanks very much for watching.